Imagine a vibrant discussion between people that includes both openness and critical thought in the pursuit of truth. The Purchasing Truth podcast is an experience, a journey, an exploration of the impact that negative messages in politics and the media have on our families, community, society, and nation. Join your hosts, Bill Stierle and Tom Hazard, to discover new concepts and language strategies that will reveal effective ways of establishing truth. This podcast series will tackle current events, leadership challenges, healthcare confusion, integrity in business, and many other areas that affect us all. Gain clarity and understanding of the various truth perspectives. Welcome to Purchasing Truth.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Purchasing Truth. I'm Tom Hazard, here with your host, Bill Stierle. And so, Bill, I really got motivated, I'm trying to find a way to put some emphasis on this without making it positive or negative, because actually I think there's so many ways to look at this, but I got motivated, or maybe I got somehow a fire lit under me to talk about a particular meme that was circulated on Facebook. At least that's where I first saw it.
Yeah.
That when I looked at it, I'm like, wow, that's a very interesting meme. And it's definitely something that's here and now in our society that a lot of people are sort of wrestling with. And I had a certain perspective as a business owner that I wanted to comment on the meme. And I did. What I was really shocked by is how other people saw it.
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of times, Tom, people see images or memes and how could they do anything different than read it from their perspective, read it from their beliefs, read it from their bias, read it from their information, and that's the challenge, is that if I extend somebody that trust to another person and they tell me something's bad, I don't go there because I'm trusting them and I believe it's bad, but I haven't looked at the thing myself. And there's several things in the environment, or several things that are, being written about and decided upon at the government level that don't belong being decided at that level, just because of the belief or the bias or the confirmation that this thing is bad, when really actually it's not bad. It's written in a way to have the person engage in the image, which is what you brought forward here today, is an image in regards to vaccines. And how do we, on a communication show, empathize with an image? How do we look at an image and train our brain to create perspective and perception, with this image, rather than saying this is what it means? We need to check our internal world to say, we're putting some interpretation on this, and it's not a bad thing, but it's also something that we can catch on our side, that we are escalating it, not the image is escalating it, that our belief or our bias is escalating things.
Yeah, well, I certainly experienced that, although at the time maybe I didn't fully understand what was happening. But
you knew something was up.
Yeah, I knew something.
Your internal world knew something was up. You're like, wait a minute, what is this? What does this thing mean? So that's called hats off to you, is that your observational mind's getting better. Your objective mind is getting better. That's a good thing. That's what that is.
Well, I hope so. Anyway, I certainly try to approach things from that place of observation first, because as we've learned back in the truth scale, observation is really the closest on the scale of truth to truth, or it's very high up on the truth scale. But let me for our listeners paint a mental picture here.
Yeah, please
for them.
Yes.
So this meme, it's just a graphic image, like a cartoon, I guess, if you want to call it that. And those of you who are listening can check this image out at the blog post at purchasingtruth.com. But what it is a drawn image of what I would call a chasm, or think of it as a canyon, or basically there's this place that a person is standing on the right on the edge of, I mean, it could be a cliff, or, I don't know, it could be only 10 or 12 feet off the ground. It's hard to see because the bottom of the image is cut off. But the idea being you'd need a bridge to cross from one side to the other. There's a gap in the earth that is there that no one could walk across or jump across. And so there's a person there holding a briefcase, kind of bent over, and there's a couple of little lines or hashes drawn around his head. So it kind of looks like the person may be exasperated. Oh, good. Bill's sharing it for our video viewers, so you could check it out. So there's a gap, and on the other side of the gap is a big signpost that says job, J-O-B, and that same looking briefcase underneath the job, and then some money on the other side of that sign of the job. And actually there's kind of a line coming down from the top with what looks like a fish hook holding the money. Yes. But what the bridge is across the chasm is a hypodermic needle, obviously enlarged one. It's bigger than the person. And, really what this is saying is the person needs to, the implication is get the vaccine, walk across the vaccine to get to their job. And then there is text at the top that says, no one should have to cross this bridge. And then in caps, no one. So a person who I'm connected with on Facebook, I think actually somebody I'm associated with from back in my high school days. Yeah. Although I don't really know the person very well. I mean, I had to actually look that up. Was I in high school with this person? I don't remember, So, but anyway, I'm connected on Facebook with this person. Right. And I saw this meme and I was like, that's very interesting. I mean, that's really the way I approached it. I looked at this meme, I looked at what it said, and saying no one should have to get a vaccine in order to have a job or to do their job. I mean, there's a few different ways you could interpret this, just on its face, meaning just looking plainly at what it says. And so I decided I'm going to make a comment as a business owner, because while it says no one should have to cross this bridge, and while I agree no one should have to, I thought I would offer some perspective as a business owner who employs a lot of people, that there are other things to consider. And, there may be some good reasons why an employer requires a vaccine for their employees, or certainly certain jobs within their company. Maybe it doesn't have to be every job within their company, but certain jobs. And I just thought I'd offer some perspective on that, and I did. And prefaced it by saying, hey, I'm not making a political statement. This isn't meant to be a political post, purely offering some thoughts from the perspective of a business owner. And for the most part, there was a real civil discussion and debate that took place amongst people commenting on this, but still some things really surprised me. I mean, I was really shocked at how some people reacted to not only this meme, but to what I wrote. Right. And it really took me aback, because, I mean, Bill, I want your serious thoughts on this, because you have incredible perspective to offer. But let me just say, I had so many people comment on this post saying the government should never require a vaccine for people to do their job. It's like, okay, I hear you. And I would try to empathize with them. It's like, I didn't see this meme as having anything to do with government mandates over vaccines, because honestly, I didn't. From my perspective, there's nothing in this meme that says anything about the government.
The word government is not on this thing. There's nothing. So that's a great example, Tom, of it's activating a belief, a bias, a perception. So the perception's activated that the government is putting the needle there. Now, the government has made a mandate, but that's not what this thing is about. This is, you've got to cross this threshold of vaccination to have these other things. So So that's the perception right now. That's what the picture's showing.
Well,
That's the observation.
yeah, I mean, there's none in its words or in the cartoon is there anything here about the government doing anything. So I mean, when people would comment about the government mandating things, we were right in the middle during this time of, the Biden administration had issued an executive order for OSHA, the Occupational Health and Safety Administration, or whatever of the country, to require any company with more than 100 employees to mandate their employees get the vaccine, or the government was mandating it. And this was being challenged and going through the courts, and the decision had not yet come down as a lot of this debate is going on. So they, of course, now we know the Supreme Court ended up ruling against the Biden administration from the OSHA perspective, that they thought it was a bridge too far for the government to require any company with 100 employees. But they did.
Pause right there before you do that, because as you set that is a big discussion point right there.
Okay.
Because you've got two things: individual freedoms and the collective good of the nation. You got those two things. The collective good of the nation also needs to consider individual rights. But at the same time, they also got to realize that as soon as you meet some individual rights, then you lose the collective good of the nation. So you got to, those are things. Now, here's the bad news. The bad news is they picked individual rights over the collective good of the nation. That means there's nobody protecting the greater good. That's what that means. Just let that sink for a second. Let it sink for a second, that the protection of the greater good is not what the court does. Now, in the past, we've gotten ourselves into trouble here. During the AIDS epidemic, there was decisions made in the same way, where people picked money over a person's life. That's what they did. They said, we're not going to vote for the greater good and test the blood, the blood banks. We're not going to do that because it's going to cost too much. That's what they did. So, and it cost lives. How many? Thousands. That's problematic because it's a health issue. Now, I'm kind of bugged by this because I lost a sibling in that. Now in our current condition, this picture is saying this individual is required to meet the needs of the greater good. And the way it's set up is, hey, listen, your job and your financial security is going to be threatened because we need the greater good to be taken care of. Now, notice how I'm looking at the picture very, very differently than the person that has the mandate. Okay, now we're ready to take a look at what those different needs are on both sides, because a child will look at this and have a snap decision. A person that is not exploring the perception of this is going to jump to a bias. It's easier to jump to something that you validated in the past to be true, or somebody that you trust. It's easier to pick that than it is to do what you and I are doing, is critically looking at the picture. Okay, now I'm ready for the next piece of it, because you have another piece.
Well, I mean, the government, the Supreme Court, well, on the one hand, denied or ruled against the Biden administration from the perspective of OSHA and having this mandate apply to all companies with so many employees. They did allow the mandate to go forward that the Biden administration required for healthcare workers, hospital workers, things like that. So there was a partial victory, and there was a partial victory and a partial loss for sort of both sides in this debate. Now, that's just sort of the information, the news on its face. What I was shocked, Bill, and until you used the word with me, that this meme activated things in the viewers' eyes,
Yes.
viewers of the Facebook post. I didn't really I mean, I'm here, I am trying to empathize with their needs and my comments back and forth and have a civil discussion about it, which we did have a civil discussion and I did empathize with their needs. But one person actually said to me, Tom, I saw this meme as the government requiring vaccines. And that's why they were commenting on it. And I said, okay, I can appreciate that. Thanks for letting me know. I didn't see how anywhere in this meme it was talking about the government. So my comments are not about a government mandate. They're about an individual company. And by the way, Bill, we should say here, just for the record, that individual private companies are allowed to mandate that their employees take the vaccines. I had somebody say to me in a comment that was unconstitutional, and I had to break the bad news to them in an empathetic way that, well, I hear that you'd like me to hear that a private company requiring vaccines is unconstitutional. Is that right? And of course they said yes. And then I explained to them, well, actually, that's really not the case. Private companies are allowed to do anything. The constitutional challenges have really been only about the government making a mandate of some kind like this, not individual companies. I mean, the airlines are the biggest example, like United Airlines, American Airlines have absolutely issued a company-wide mandate. Their employees need to be vaccinated or they lose their jobs. Other places like, I think, what was it? Police department in New York City did the same thing, even though that's a local government agency. They made that decision on their own.
That's right.
Many companies have, and that is legal and constitutional, just putting that out there as a fact. Although I realized, Bill, as I'm having this sort of civil discussion / debate with other people over Facebook, even though the facts were on my side, the facts really didn't matter very much to them.
Now, the facts in the face of something, a person's perception that they're holding on to, it's not as much important as fighting for the thing I know. If I fight for the thing I know, I have more stability in my world. I have more certainty. I've made a decision about this. So the influencers, media, the influencers, politicians and various different leaders are trying to solidify the perception and the belief early and trying to get something to stick to keep the person on their side. So that's why, and former President Trump goes on to a stage and does a thing called test marketing. He says a sentence and he looks to see how many people cheer for it. He then comes back and says it in a different way and then sees that they cheer for it. So he is testing the tone and the impulse of what the audience is listening to in order to increase loyalty, increase engagement, increase the thing. That's why he would say Ron DeSantis is boring. Why? Because Ron is just copying something rather than testing something. See, he's just a marketing and salesperson, and people really don't know that the president is just a marketing and salesperson. He's not necessarily a civic leader. A civic leader is somebody different than what he is. He's not a civic leader. He is a marketing and sales expert that uses a language to market and sell. He was on TV and he kept doing marketing and sales messaging. That's what he did. And it's all about getting his brand and his image and his products to be purchased. And a large part of it has to do with his own respect and recognition that he gets met at the expense of others, and his own self-worth that he's trying to fill. Part of it's all of that. So with this picture, to pivot back to the picture, is if the bias or the imprint has been laid in that government mandate is the image, then that phrase gets associated with this picture. And government mandate means that freedom is lost, instead of government mandate is a civil protective recommendation / demand on society called, let's not kill our fellow Americans by exposing them to these viruses. Now, this is problematic.
What's this really problematic? Wow, Bill. I mean, so there's a couple things there's two things that you just said that I think would help to put a little emphasis on. So first thing is, you're saying that the person who views the meme, if they've been hearing government mandate, government mandate, government mandate, now, even though this meme on its face says nothing about a government mandate, doesn't even imply anything about a government mandate. I mean, from my perspective, from an objective viewing place, this meme has nothing to do with government mandate. However, that doesn't matter. So many people that saw it, this requirement to get a vaccine for your job.
Yes.
And for those of you that weren't watching the video, I sort of held up my fingers, put some air quotes around requirement there. This requirement to get a vaccine to have their job is they're concerned about Big Brother, the government mandating it, and the idea of a government mandating it. And as we were in the middle of this Supreme Court battle / review of the Biden administration's mandates, I mean, a lot of people are really activated by that. And so they go and comment in a very unhappy way back to me, about this because of the government mandating it and the constitutional issues, and saying, how the Supreme Court's going to rule on this, Tom, whatever, things like that. So I found it very, very interesting. And all I was trying to do, just to make this clear, all I was trying to do is say, hey, everyone, I understand an individual's desire to not be required to have a vaccine to have their job. I can understand the personal freedom argument and concerns. All I was trying to do is give them a little perspective of the consequences to a business owner for an employee who decides not to get vaccinated, especially for jobs that require them to go out into the field and be with other people and get potentially exposed to the virus. And if they get sick and hospitalized, there's a whole host of consequences for the company to that individual person's choice to not get vaccinated. That's all I was trying to put perspective on. Okay. But then, so something else you said there, Bill, I think is really quite important to talk about. And of course, as I say that, Bill, just to pick up on that important thing to talk about, it has to do with motivation. The motivation is, what is the motivation of this thing? I can change the meaning of this picture with 2 words. That was the thing I wanted to bring up, Bill. You got it right there. Is that this meme? Let's be honest about this meme. This meme has a bias, and I think, or the author of the meme, because
watch. I want to change the meaning first before it's
right,
I can laugh.
Okay.
The thing it says, no one should have to cross this bridge. No one. Watch this one. No one should have had to cross this bridge. Early testing to keep the virus out of the nation. Notice it's no one should have to have. We needed to protect ourselves earlier. We needed to do contact tracing. We needed to get a hold of a national illness so it didn't wreck our economy. No one should have had to crawl this. No one should have to. But guess what? Now we're stuck having to do this. We're stuck doing this. Now the image of the person going like, where were the civil servants? Where were the people that to protect us from this disease? The answer was denying it was real and it was going to have a major impact. That's what they were doing. How do we know this? I don't know. News footage. News footage.
Oh yeah.
You've got 500 people. We still have 500 people. 500 people a day are dying right now. 500 people a day. Right now, at this moment.
No,
Today,
at this moment, you and me, Bill. No, it's even more than that. It's like 1,500 people are dying a day now.
I just looked yesterday. That's how.
Really? Is it down?
It was down a little bit. So,
that's
the last
down
2
a lot.
days. Last 2 days, it's been 500.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But 1,500 was a week ago.
Yeah.
A week ago was 1,500. So what does that mean to us? At this point of this recording, we're sitting at 878,000 people have died. Almost, we're getting close to 1 million. I don't know if we're gonna, get our free sub at the end of this thing or whatever, because we're sitting at, at a place where we need to motivate the population now to overcome marketing and branding and being sold that this is not real or this is not a big deal. We need to overcome this with a lot of early childhood parenting strategies. If you do this, you get that, bribing people, making deal making, trying to give a discount, trying to give gifts for people to take the things. I mean, we're doing very, very early childhood parenting strategies. Oh, by the way, that don't work all that well.
Well, and the other side doesn't work that well either. Did you see the province of Quebec, Canada, has actually put a mandate over all their citizens that if you don't get vaccinated, you have to pay a tax. They're saying, we're not going to pay. The government isn't going to foot the bill for all you people continuing to get sick who aren't getting vaccinated. So you are going to have a tax by this date if you don't get vaccinated. Once they actually, and now that's sort of the different, that is I forget what you call that in terms of the parent. That's the parent that's going to institute strong.
It's punish. Yeah, it's a carrot and a stick. It's a stick technique. So you're a tax on the vax. If you don't do it, we aren't paying your health care, and you got to pay it.
Right, and
that scares.
It scared the heck out of people. And as soon as they did issue that requirement in Quebec, the appointments for vaccinations shot way up.
Right. And Americans going like, oh yeah, I'm going to be defiant. Well, the reason why Americans can do that is because the healthcare burden is on the person anyways. The insurance, purchasing and stuff like that is on them anyways. So it's sort of like, well, I guess you could mandate it. Stuff. And, I'm going to take advantage of the broken system anyway. And if I'm sick, I'll show up there. They'll treat me anyways, and then I won't pay for it. I mean, it's because there is there's no gift already of healthcare that's available. We don't have the stick option as much. We have
it's interesting. National healthcare like they have in Canada, I think makes it probably a harder argument that, compulsory vaccines where you're going to pay a tax is maybe more tolerable as an idea without like revolt.
You want your freedom? If you want your freedom, you got to pay a tax for it. If you want your independence, you got to pay a tax for it, because then we're creating money so that when you become sick, we have money to pay for your illness. And that's what the tax is for.
Yeah.
Because you're not doing it.
Wow. So Bill, back to the meme, the cartoon for a second. So, I mean, definitely this is drawn and put out by someone who has a perspective that no one should be required to have a vaccine to have their job, regardless of whether it's a government mandate. But so what's missing perspective wise, I found it interesting. We and I were talking about this last week before recording this. You were saying, well, we could write on the needle, on the syringe, we could write a few words
that's right,
for the good reason why a company might require it, and some of that you've mentioned, like protection of others, and getting to a more stable economy more quickly, things like that. But I think
let's clean that up. Let's clean that up. So there's different needs sitting on both sides of this issue. One of the needs has to do with the need for freedom and independence, as well as I get to have choice about what happens with my body. I get to have choice.
Right.
With my medical issues. So that's on one side, this choice, freedom, independence, hyper individuality. That's what America provides us. On the other side of the narrative, it has to do with consideration for others. It has to do with protection for self. So you take the vaccine and there's different ways to choose. Like my son says, I am taking the vaccine because I do not want to get anybody else sick. And I also don't want to be in the hospital. So I am not doing XYZ because I'm choosing that. He's 20 years old. He's choosing that. That was his choice. He didn't say, I'm a rugged individual. I'm a young person. I can just get it and get it over with. He's not saying that. He's saying, I don't want to be a spreader, and I don't want to be one of the unlucky persons to be in the hospital with a ventilator. So notice how he's working through it.
Right.
And he's picking this set of needs. Well, as we're looking at this picture, do we pick it that this is about the loss of freedom for the person? Or do we pick it as, here's what a civic duty looks like. Here's what consideration for others. Here's what to get back to normal looks like. See, all of that stuff could be written around the syringe area.
Yeah.
It could be written as like, freedom, choice. You could put literally all the words that are necessary in the decision, because it's not just one motive to get you across to take the vaccination. It's, here are some things on this side, you get your freedom and independence, but on the other side, you get financial security and stability with the job. But in between that is caring for other or civic or social duty. That's what the syringe is in the representation of. Now, there's going to be people that are going to argue the vaccines don't,
Yeah, they don't work. I had some of that too.
And
the vaccines haven't proven to be effective, some people were trying to say.
That's right. They have not proven to be effective in preventing the disease, but they have been effective at mitigating death. That is what's missing in the narrative. People want the all or none thing.
Right. It's a lot easier.
They want it to work always, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's that again?
It's a lot easier decision than if it's an all or nothing proposition.
All or nothing. But this one is, sorry, medicine's not that good, but medicine in preparation for you dying, we can do that part. That's what this vaccine does. We have not gotten rid of smallpox or polio or some of these other things. There's certain diseases. I think I'm wrong about polio. We have certain diseases we have not eliminated, but there are certain diseases that we have.
Yeah, we have. And actually the measles outbreak at Disneyland several years ago is one example. I mean, measles is something that we definitely as a country have mitigated. We've made it not a serious health threat because pretty much every child in the United States who grows up here is required to have that vaccine in order to go to school at some point. Yeah. And then, obviously lots of people travel to Disneyland from outside of the country and other places. Yeah. Anyway, there ended up being this measles outbreak, and we all saw how fast this thing spread like wildfire among people who were not vaccinated. It's like, whoa, that was serious. Okay, so there's another thing that this meme doesn't really do, and I would just, for business owners everywhere, like to mention it, is that this, on its face, it says no one should have to cross this bridge to get a vaccine in order to have their job. And I'm actually in agreement with that as a business owner. No one should have to do that. And this is America. You don't have to. If you don't want to be vaccinated, you don't have to work for a company that requires a vaccine. There are plenty of companies that have jobs out there that don't have vaccine requirements. And you, as an employee, have a choice to go get another job somewhere else. Now, I know that may be easier said than done for some people. I don't mean that to be completely callous and saying, I'm sure some people love the job they've had for decades and they don't want to leave and go to another company. I get all that. But in terms of, just the strict requirement, it's not a requirement. And the other thing that's problematic for me about this meme, which interestingly, nobody in this Facebook post commented on it, and I sort of thought they would because I thought it was a little troubling about the meme, is the idea that the money is on a fish hook on a line, almost as if to imply that when you cross the bridge and go to your job, you get the vaccine to have your job, then the company might still yank the money away after you've done that. I mean, that there's some troubling things about the money on the hook that I don't I don't think are helpful. I think it would have made more sense to have a basket of money on the other side, just sitting there for you. You do your job, you get the money, and no
That's
implication of the money being yanked away from you.
Yeah.
But nobody really commented on that. That isn't what activated anybody. Let's put it that way.
It activated you because that was.
I was sort of prepared to deal with the fallout of that as an employer. I was prepared for somebody to sort of challenge me on that, and no one did. But I didn't write the meme, but here I am saying, hey, there's another perspective. But there are many perspectives. And I think that's what I actually appreciate about this meme, is that it's very thought-provoking. And it actually, how do we say, stimulated what I still now will say was a very healthy debate, a very healthy discussion among people on Facebook. For the most part, they're all having a civil discussion and being mutually respectful. It didn't descend into blaming and shaming and name calling and all sorts of other stuff.
Right.
So I was appreciative of that and pleased with that.
Yeah, I think that we can kind of stick the landing on here is that we've got to do a better job as both observers and as speakers to see what are the needs on both sides of the issue. And, if the facts are in the information that come in, lean towards one of those two things. We need to let go of, we're not going to get the thing that we think is most valuable. So, if we're in the place of commitment and loyalty to something, and then we want the need for freedom or choice, but we want commitment and we want choice, people are making that decision all the time to make those things work together, whether it's a family member or a marriage or a relationship or a partnership. You don't get all the freedoms you used to have when you were single. When you're married, you don't get all those freedoms.
Very true.
You've got to choose which need you're picking. Integrity, commitment, you're picking those until, the person says, hey, listen, I don't want to do the commitment anymore. Okay, well, you don't want to do the commitment anymore. Well, that part of the commitment was important to me. Okay. That's the challenge. A great discussion today. I'm really delighted that you brought it, Tom, because it's really helps us with the challenge that we're going to have, as we're entering the cold civil war that we're in. We've got to do some things and speak our way out of the cold civil war to create places where we're in agreement and then we can work together, not all or none. You're this and you're that. And that means that we can't even have any agreement at all, which is really where our nation is wedging itself to. And it doesn't need to be there. So
that sounds like we're teeing up some good discussions coming up for future episodes there, Bill.
Yeah. And if any of you listeners, if any of you listeners need support to work through these difficult issues, feel free to reach out to us and we'll be glad to support you more. Okay,
Bill, thanks very much. Appreciate your time. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for listening to this Purchasing Truth podcast. We trust that you have enjoyed this engaging and thought-provoking conversation. Our hope is that you've received value, found clarity, and broadened your truth perspective in this episode. If you did, leave us a review or visit our website, purchasingtruth.com. Join us again for another informative and content-rich discussion here at the Purchasing Truth podcast. Don't just accept whatever information comes your way. Join the discussion. Discover your own voice. Purchase your own truth.